But these types of subtle changes. I remember a story you told me about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, on a flight from California coming here. And I mean, obviously, you guys have been very dedicated. You've flown out from California to here, every 2 weeks for a long time.
2 years.
For 2 years, right? And I mean, that's a commitment that it takes to get this type of a poison out of one's system. So anyway, here's the question that I remember, and it came in my head when you told me this story. You said that at the airport, there was an incident when there was a gentleman that sat next to David, and there was a conversation about motorcycles or something, and he missed his. He got up to catch his flight, but he missed his flight. He came back and sought David out, sat down, and continued the conversation.
Correct.
And you had tears in your eyes when you were telling me this, because you said you never thought that would ever be possible, that somebody would actually be able to,
communicate
in a normal, neurotypic fashion.
Yes.
I remember that one.
David just struck up a conversation which was totally out of the normal for him. And the man was genuinely interested in what David had to say. And they just talked, and as you said, he went away, and then literally came back, and they continued the conversation. Mm-hmm. And I had not seen that before. And
what was that again?
Very exciting.
Where was that?
You all were talking about Nintendo, all the, Atari, Nintendo, PlayStation.
Those type of stories that you told me, and the fact that now, I remember when I first saw David. Do you remember being very resistant to communicate? Mm-hmm. You remember that? Almost, in some ways, you could say aggressive, like passive aggressive. Would you say that would be? There was a lot of anger.
He was frustrated.
Frustration.
It's hard.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like how describe it. I don't want to put words in your mouth. So describe it to me. Do you remember what that felt like?
I would always have panic attacks for no reason, and I could never figure out why. I figured it was caused by how would I explain this? It was caused by if I have a dream about something, and then whatever I dreamed about, something reminds me of it. Back then, it would throw me into a panic attack. Now I have somewhat of control over it. But
the panic attacks have become frightening, actually, to me, because I could see them getting worse and worse, and they would last for a couple days, where he'd just shake, and his eyes would just dart back and forth. But as we got into treatment, that all went away. Yeah, it's actually very interesting that Avi actually had that. And oh, really?
He, last night, in fact, got up in the middle of the night and, didn't know where he was. And it doesn't happen that frequently now, but it used to happen a lot. And you're not the only person to have actually expressed the same thing. I've seen this with a couple of other patients, too. But where the heart is beating so fast and you can't figure out, it's like a sympathetic overdrive response, and you can't always relate it to a dream necessarily. Some people say, well, it's just a nightmare. But this is like, did you ever have any sleepwalking type thing?
Once,
yeah.
And he had night terrors.
Night terrors. That's
and I
really
still
what
remember. I still remember them.
And the issue is that resolved now?
It's all gone.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because one of the things is, and this is actually, it's interesting we're having this conversation because I was just thinking last month that I haven't treated Albie in 2 years, and I thought maybe I should take him through another course. And I've just seen it twice now in the last maybe 3 months where he's had this, and he hasn't had it for a long time. And so it's interesting we're talking about this now because that's the hint I needed to know.
Maybe
that
some of the toxins are building back up in his system.
Exactly. Obviously, he's back just like David is, but there's still some, there's still a propensity to develop or accumulate those toxins when you're being exposed to them. So, and we can't do anything to prevent exposure sometimes, the combustion of fossil fuels and some of these other things, the type of water we're drinking, we can never control all those things.
Our water's pretty good.
Yeah, and most people that are aware of it, we get clean water and we make sure we have
osmosis.
Exactly, that type of stuff. So.